Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cathy and Dave's 4th hobby hangout. It is 4.
Yes.
Time
is very confusing.
Time is very confusing. So confusing. In which this week we'll be talking about Good Omens, primarily the book by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, but more than likely we'll stray into the TV show and.
Those are
there's only those 2 media properties.
I'm not sure which other thing
no,
is.
I'm just trying to think whether it was being made into a comic or a.
No, that's other Neil Gaiman stuff involving angels.
Okay.
Various other Neil Gaiman properties involving angels have been made into comics. Neverwhere, Murder Mysteries, short story.
And typically, Manel, of course, heard me say, "I'll shut up now." I won't shut up.
That's the whole point.
I've spent a lot of this week talking, but anyway. So, how are you?
Very tired. So next week is the busiest week of the year for my work, like every year. So that is expected, but we're doing it remotely from our houses this year. So that's sort of interesting, and just also a lot of the usual prep has been condensed into a shorter time. So it's just quite tiring at the moment. And this is also, I didn't want to do one of these next week because that will be just over halfway through my really busy week, and also the day before the longest working day of the year. So, yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're not here next week. Well, we are going to be here, just not, you lot won't be here with us. We'll just be sitting on our sofa watching TV.
I might be asleep.
Yeah. Possibly Umbrella Academy, depends whether we got that far and finished it by then.
Business, yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
How are you?
How am I? I have also, so Cathy's crazy week is next week. Mine turns out to be this week.
But you didn't know that in advance?
But I didn't know that until Friday. We are currently sorting out opening Birmingham libraries for some order and collect services, and things spun up a bit quicker than we expected. And so I went from just doing 2 training sessions this week to doing 5 training sessions this week.
Oh, is it 5 now?
Yes, I'm.
You can't even do the Thursday, or are you doing 2
on Friday? I'm doing 2 on Friday.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because, yeah.
So the demand for Friday hotted up a bit.
Well, I was going to Northfield.
Oh, of course, yes, you do.
I've got 1 in person.
1 physical one. Yes.
One actually in person, and then
get to see people you work with.
I get to be in a library, and I get to see my colleagues. Although part of me thinks that it might be beneficial for me to do it over Teams with them, being unable to speak back to me, but that's only because they know me and I know them, so they can get away with talking back to me.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm having an interesting week. Not that my weeks weren't already reasonably interesting to begin with, but
let's just be thankful my mother could come and look after the child.
Thank God, yes.
I mean, we sent back to nursery a few weeks ago because he's already starting to get bored as my working days got longer and busier. But yeah.
We love the little one, but yeah, he's not conducive to doing concentrating work. Not unless we're sticking in front of the TV watching a lot of stuff. And while we know Hey Dougie is awesome, keep an eye out for another hobby hangout on those sort of things. Yeah, there's a limit to what really we wanted to see him watching. So.
Well, CBeebies and Disney Plus.
Yes, thank you, Manuel. You have been talking back to me for decades, as evidenced by the talking back to me now. I can't win. Really can't. Anyway, what are you doing? What's your hobby today?
I'm not sure how hobbyish it is, but so I made a load of masks for wearing on the bus and in shops, which are mostly fine. But I discovered that in order to both see and exhale at the same time, they need to be shaped better. So I've been putting pipe cleaners in the top of them, so I can actually sort of shape it around my face and my glasses. Although, top tip, if you have put your mask up on your nose and put your glasses over them, do not forget that when you get off the bus, whip your mask off, because your glasses will fly across the pavement.
Ooh, yeah.
So there you go. That did happen the other day. I had to tell little ones stand still while I went and grabbed them, where they did not go into the bus, but were probably a bit closer than they should have been. I was like, oh no.
that's not good.
No, because I did see a thing where you can also put a button on it to rest your glasses on, so they're a bit further down than they would be. But I think I've managed not to have to do that. But yeah, this is the last kind of one that I pre-sewed before, like a while ago, that perhaps needs some pipe cleaner in it. So I'm just unpicking this at the moment, and I might sew the pipe cleaner in a little bit, see how I go.
Cool.
See how much concentration I have at the moment as well.
That's fair enough. Don't want to poke yourself in the needle too much. I will be continuing building my Sazabi. I haven't continued this project off screen because I've got too many other projects going on up in the attic. So this will be my live streaming project. Oops, kicking the seat there. I will be putting up some photos. I've almost finished my Scarab Terminators from the first stream. So
Oh, we put photos up as well. Because I've not lost the sewing.
Okay, well we'll put some photos up.
Sure.
At some point, I'll bite the bullet.
You can send photos through your text messaging,
Google,
email, or photo app. To learn how to send photos through a specific...
No one even said Google.
The mic's off. By the way, the mic's off. To turn it back on, slide the switch. The mic...
Just unplug it.
The mic's off.
Why was it so loud?
Okay.
That's terrifying.
That's because
No one said Google.
That's because somebody, and when I say somebody, I mean a small person, pushed it under the TV, and so it's gone up to maximum volume.
Oh, okay. It tried talking the other day when I was in a meeting. It was just talking from across the room.
Yeah,
I can check that for you. I'm like, what?
That was it. Was a free. It was a free Google Nest from Google because it was free, and it can be quite fun. It can be quite useful. We have done some of the games with the little one, but yeah, sometimes it's a little random. It's also I usually use it for playing music through. Anyway, back onto topic. We can manage this right. Before we get on to Good Omens, what have we been reading?
Books.
Books. We have been reading books. We do that a lot. We do like our books.
I mean, in fairness, I've also been reading Twitter, but that was
that's never a good idea.
Satisfying.
That's never a good idea.
And yet it keeps happening. So I did mention this one last time, but I've been busy and tired, so I've not read anything, but I did finish it. So, I mean, obviously it looks like quite a big book. This is actually, is it 3 or 4 novels? 3 novels, and there's also like an introduction by Dave Langford that I only just read now because I thought I'm not going to read it before I've read the novels. So this is an omnibus of 3 novels by James White, as mentioned before. This one's called Alien Emergencies. The novel I just finished reading was... where's the contents again? Star Healer, there we go. Which were lent to me by our friend Tim, who has like a load of these, and I've been kind of gradually reading through them since sometime last year.
It has been a while, yeah.
It's been a while because I just tend to read like one novel at a time, so usually it takes me several months to go for an omnibus because I'll read other things in between. Because I don't really necessarily feel like binging them, but yes. So yes, I mean it's older science fiction, like it was 20th century. Mid to late 20th century science fiction. And actually reading the introduction, I discovered that the author actually died in 1999, although I think the last thing was published in 2001, but obviously posthumously. It's interesting actually because there has been, largely on Twitter, some discussion of older science fiction writers and how much their legacies should still be a thing that people are talking about a lot. And I'm not rehashing any of that, but it's been a good conversation.
There are better minds than us can do it better justice.
Totally. And already have done.
I was going to say, Alstria, go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Al's the reason I actually have been reading these, because, again, probably not even last year, like maybe the year before, he mentioned in his newsletter, which is twice you go nominated now,
yes.
About this series of books and how, they're about, they're science fiction. It's about kind of people caring, about people using their smarts, their intelligence, their ingenuity to solve problems. It's all about basically a massive hospital in space that caters for just about any species. And it's what's called a multi-environment hospital. So there's wards for oxygen breathers, wards for chlorine breathers, wards for aquatic species. There's wards for species that have to be kept at way sub-zero and live off radiation. There's just all sorts of things. So it's this big sort of hodgepodge. The main character is a human doctor called Conway, and it's sort of about him kind of gradually rising through the ranks in the hospital. And there's a formula to it in that it's kind of like, here's a weird medical thing, and Conway has to get more information, try and solve it, and usually like all the situation gets a bit worse and then it gets better, and quite often it's a bit like, oh. But as you go through it, there's more and more sort of like, we need tons of resources to help this creature or these creatures or the species, and it just gets given to them. And yeah, it's just quite optimistic, and I think when I first read it, it sort of reminded me of Peso from Octonauts, which is a children's TV show. He's the medic. He never says doctors, but I think that's just because penguins don't have universities. That one can tell. And he always says, "What is it? I'm Peso. I'm medic. It's my job to help any creature who's in distress or who's hurting or something." So, and that's the whole thing of these books. It's like, well, anything that's having a problem, we'll help it. And you're like, that's nice. And then there's a previous story has like something that's the size of a continent that needs help. There's a thing that's like enormous. They called it the Midgard worm, which I think was kind of a bit of a joke, but it's sort of, it's this massive thing that was travelling through space and needs to be put back together. And sometimes stuff's quite weird. There's quite weird stuff, but the whole point is sort of like the mystery gets fixed or gets figured out, and then they can cure it or help and stuff like that. So yeah, the most recent one involved a species that were, to use Star Trek parlance, I guess pre-warp, but they're quite not very technologically advanced, but they seem to be very sentient. But it's weird actually, because this guy came to this planet and everyone was keeping really far apart, and you couldn't approach anyone, touch anyone. And I'm like, is this some sort of plague? But it wasn't that. It's just that this species are incredibly intelligent, but they can't go near each other, and they also don't use kind of personal pronouns, make things personal. Everything that's spoken about is very much kind of general, rather than referring to an individual. But they've made contact with a medic of this species, but their problem is that all their medical stuff has to be done like at length, so they have to kind of use instruments and stuff because no one can touch each other. The only reason you could ever touch anyone is kind of for procreation or child rearing purposes. But it sort of turns out that when the species gets together, there's this whole thing, and that's basically stopped them from developing any kind of like in industry or science or civilization, because things get a bit destructive, and it's just stopped them. And it's interesting, really, because it's not solved, but it's clearly... Well, the books have gone from being quite standalone to the point where it's almost like each section novel was quite standalone, because I think a lot of them are based on short stories, to being a bit more tied in with each other. So this last one refers back to previous books, and refers back to this guy's career, because he's kind of taking a big step in his career, and it's like, is this the right step for him? But it refers to like previous aliens that were found and trying to solve problems they're having. So it's kind of like they solve a problem for one species that's had trouble developing because of its physiology, and now they're looking at this other species that I assume that would be the subject of the next book. But there's actually a bit more linkage through. So I mean they're not very character driven. It's kind of like a mystery thing, really. So it's very very kind of plotty. It's like, oh, here's this neat idea, and like, oh, it's a bit weird how we solve it, but that's fine. I wouldn't say the main character's massively engaging. He's fine. I may have mentioned before that the sort of representation of females, as it's referred to in the book, is not great, because like certainly in the first one I couldn't actually tell if anyone... No, there was one, a nurse was female, and you couldn't even tell what species they were. It was just, or she was, it was just... and then the main female character in it, who's the main character's wife. Not that they're... Well, this actually goes into a relationship a little bit more, because part of the step he's taken in his career affects his personal life a lot, so she is obviously affected. But before that, like, there's one book where they're obviously having a bit of a thing in their relationship as to where they're going, and then they seem to decide they would be together. And literally the next book, like, a fair way in, it just mentions they're married. And it's like, well, when did that happen? What? Like, somebody in the end of the Proust book said, oh, he's going to get the girl. And I just thought that meant, they've smoothed out their relationship problems. Apparently it meant they got married. But again, it's like, I suppose a different type. It's just, yeah. There's also, I think, it's a little bit irritating where this step this guy is taking to, advance his career is something that does not work for women at all because of, like, psychology. And it's like, okay, right, well, fine. But again, sort of, I think from the point of view of older SF, but I've not read much of that. It's kind of still pretty nice and fun, so it is interesting. And I'd say the whole point is not meant to be character or relationship driven, it's meant to be kind of like idea and plot driven, which I can appreciate. So, yeah. So I've kind of enjoying those, but yeah. What have you been reading?
I finished off the second book in the... I can't remember what the series is called.
You're working on library.
Recently.
That's a good point. Sorry.
It was Legion of Flame by Anthony Ryan. So it's the second book of Draco Imperius.
It's one of the dragons on the cover. Isn't
Yes,
it?
one of the dragons on the cover.
Not that's very descriptive of like a lot of things in one bookcase.
So
maybe that's how we should organise our bookcase. You have a dragon section. These have dragons.
That might be.
We have a lot of bookcases spanning various floors. We're not quite sure what's the best way to organise.
Yeah, that's a problem for another day.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed the second book. It continued the promise of the first. A nice, I wouldn't say easy read, but adventureful, good characters, bit of action, bit of spy, bit of espionage. I've been thoroughly enjoying them. I put the third book came out this month actually.
Oh, okay.
So I've put that on my wish list for future present giving scenarios, or possibly I might just buy it beforehand because not that I don't have enough to be reading. I started How to Lose a Time War.
How to Lose the Time War.
Yeah.
We've recently won a Hugo's
Yes.
for Best Novella.
I cannot remember the authors' names now.
Amal, Mohtar, and Max Gladstone.
There we go.
I've already read this book. I'm the one that bought it. No, I've got it as a present for one of my birthdays. But I've put it on my wish list, yeah.
No, it's interesting. As I say, it's quite a short one, so it's not going to take me that long. But about two agents in a time war. Very interestingly written, very different. Well worth a look.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you thought of that, because I thought it doesn't strike me as being like the kind of thing you normally read, but, well, I suppose...
I read a lot of different
That's true, you do read a lot of different things, but I guess when it comes to like stuff that's a little bit more science fiction, I kind of assume you go more for like this sort of things and more kind of like spaceshipy, military SF type things. This is obviously, it's very lyrical and stuff, but I mean, I've enjoyed both authors' short stories when I've heard like them on podcasts. Mostly like Escape Pod and podcasts.
There we go. So that's my reading. Not as very good. Go check them out. So on to the main topic. We get there eventually. It's only been 20 minutes.
Oh, Christ. Okay, yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, if you've watched any previous ones of this, you know for well we get there in the end. But we have a format.
Do we? Okay.
Well, so far we've managed it. So
sure.
Today we are talking about Good Omens. Which is the way I'm looking at it, completely inverted. So, if it's mirror writing to you, it's take it from us as Good Omens. As you can tell, there are 2 copies in the house because we both owned one before we got together.
I got given this when I was 16, and I've read it quite a lot since. I think it's probably my most reread book. Well, certainly, like, if you don't count when I was a child, and like pitch books. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you come across it? What made you read it in the first place?
So, when I was 14 or 15, so anyway, I used to be in a youth theatre group, sort of in the evenings on a Friday, which is actually in a slightly different town to where it wasn't in the closest town to us. It was a little bit further away. It's actually where my brother-in-law comes from. Yes, so I went there, which was kind of good actually, because it meant that none of the people there went to my school, which was probably for the best, because I was fairly unconfident teenager, and shy and stuff. But yeah, so I was in this youth faith group, and there's a girl there who also was kind of like on the quite bookish side. She read quite widely in fantasy stuff, and was one of the few people I think I'd met at that point who'd actually ever read any Diana Wynne-Jones, because most people I knew didn't necessarily love that sort of thing. And I've been reading Terry Pratchett stuff Discord stuff for a little bit, and then she had mentioned Neil Gaiman and said, "Oh, he writes with Terry Pratchett." So I think I read Neverwhere first, but then I sort of looked up on library computers or something, other stuff, and Good Omens. So I put Good Omens, I think, on my birthday list, and I got given it for my 16th birthday. I can't actually remember who bought it now. I think a member of my family, probably my parents. So I read that. So when I first read it, I had mostly read Pratchett so far, so I kind of spotted all the bits that are very Pratchett-y, but since then I've read a lot of Gaiman, so you sort of see where the bits come from, like all the references to G.K. Chesterton, stuff like that. So yes, so that's how I kind of found out about it and read it, and then I just quite enjoyed it. I mean, I used to reread books a lot more as a teenager anyway. I don't really do that much anymore because there's so much new stuff, as it turns out. Which I suppose is sort of a nice problem to have. But yes. How about you?
I can't remember. Yeah.
I don't know if people can see, but my copy is quite sort of battered and well loved. And actually, at one point, I think I was looking at your one. And
that would have been discarded if it was in one of my libraries. Sorry.
Well, it's a bit different libraries, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, because I think I was looking through your one for a particular quote once, because your one was the copy I found first, and I was just there going, even though I'm pretty sure it was basically the same edition, but yours is hardback and mine's paperback, I was like, the typeface is different, or something's different, or I think some of the footnotes are in a different place, and I was like, oh, this is strange, because I've just read this one copy quite a lot of times.
Yeah, I've got to say, I honestly can't remember. So obviously it's publication date. Let's pin this down to being when I...
So, I mean, it's set in 1996. I think it was published before that.
1990.
Oh, 90. Okay, well, even earlier then.
I didn't read it then.
Well, no, I didn't think you would know. I mean, so I got it about 10 years after it was published, thinking about it. But
I think it mostly would have come down to I read a lot of Pratchett as well.
Yeah.
My mother was library.
It's in the family.
Yeah. I'm not sure what her technical job title was.
Is it not similar to what you're doing now?
It is a similar. She did work her way up to effectively assistant library manager.
Yeah.
But at the time she was just a library assistant.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, because I'm still 2/5 of a library assistant.
Yeah.
So there's actually but yes, she was working in Abingdon Library in Oxfordshire. And so basically I got whatever books I wanted, and when I was younger I used to read a little bit more broadly than perhaps I do now.
Oh, see, I found when I was working in libraries, that's when I read the most broadly, because the books were all there.
Well, I suppose not.
And then I left, and it's like, my reading just went down.
But she introduced me to various, basically she grabbed books for me because I'd read a lot. And so I think it mostly ended up, because I was reading a lot of Pratchett, and so basically if it had Terry Pratchett's name on the front of it, yeah, that's done.
We used to do that with Diana and Jones for me. It'd be a bit like, I'm just going to look at all the titles in the back of this other book and then put them on my list.
Yeah. So that's most likely where I did read it. I wouldn't imagine it would have been that far off. So if it was published 90, so I'd have been, I'm not going to tell you how old I was then at that point. Yeah, it couldn't have been that far. About 5 years after it was published, something like that, I'd have reckoned.
Okay.
But yeah, I actually hadn't read, I'd come across, or did I? I would have read Neverwhere as well. Mm-hmm. So that's most likely where it came from. But yeah, so we both... I didn't
read Sandman until later. No, that's fair enough, I would have been a bit young.
So we both came into reading it, not significantly long after it was published.
I think transition between, mine was over 10 years after it was published. So the book itself, actually, although apparently it's published in 1910, I knew it was early 90s at least. It's actually set in the book in 96, which you can tell from maths, because there's that bit about Archbishop James Usher figuring out how old the world was, or that the world was created in 6000 BC. No, that's wrong. It was created in 4004 BC. And then they say it's 6,000. Then there's a bit later on where Aziraphale says all the plan is that like there's a world that's created and it should be 6,000 years old. And if you take 404 from 6,000, it's 996. There's also a bit where they're talking about like how come none of the prophets spotted the apocalypse, and they said there was more concerned what was rhyming. It's like and the world to an end shall come in Tumpty 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 1 or 2 or 3. It's like 6 doesn't really rhyme with anything, so that's probably pretty safe, which I assume was sort of a joke.
So
you can tell I've read this a lot. I can quote whole bits of it.
Well, I thought I'll briefly say for those watching who don't know
Yeah,
what
we should
Good
explain the
Omens
plot.
is. Yeah, Good Omens. Good Omens is a book about the end of the world. It's about the apocalypse, and I don't have it on this one. The actual full title is Good Omens: The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Angus Nutter. The Nice and Accurate Prophecy of Angus Nutter,
Witch. Yeah.
So that's the subtitle. So yeah, that comes to play, the accurate prophecy. So
there's sort of a few different threads to it, isn't there?
yeah. So you've got this kind of idyllic country. You have the Antichrist.
Well, it starts a little bit before that. It starts
Yes.
at the beginning of everything. In the beginning.
Yeah. Well, as main sort of groups, you have the Antichrist and his followers. I'm not going to take. I think it's far more amusing not to say who they are,
Sure.
which is a fun little romp there. If you like, Just William. And people now having not read the book going Antichrist and Just William.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have two angels. An angel and a demon. One of them used to be an angel.
Yeah.
Who basically have this.
They have the agreement.
They basically following.
They've been the operatives of heaven and hell, respectively, on Earth, and it's just that there's no one else around who's been around for that long. And if you see the same face that many times, you sort of come to an agreement. I think they describe it again. Now that I think about being published in 1990 as being like agents on the opposite side of the Cold War who find they have more in common with their immediate opposite than they do with their distant superiors.
Yeah. So yes, you have so that is Aziraphale and Crowley.
See, I think we should say Crowley too. They keep saying it Crowley in the on the TV show, and they're like, I know you can also pronounce it that way, but I always think that Crowley, like Aleister Crowley,
Yes.
in the beginning of the song when Ozzy Osbourne says that. So
Crowley.
yeah, that's how I know how to say
I'm not going to see you
that.
singing that. You'll be glad to hear.
We're in Birmingham, and we have to pronounce things how Ozzy does. Maybe not really.
Can
Can you imagine now?
Oh God, yeah, that's not. Please not.
We'll
So
come
yes,
to
you have-
me. Our son is a Brummie.
You then have the Witch Hunters,
The Witchfinder Army.
the Witchfinder Army, who are searching for witches.
I did a project at A level, but was it before or after I got this book? I can't remember. It might have been after. No, in between AS and A level, about the Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins. That's what I write about.
Might as well. So yes, the Witchfinders. Yes, who do witchfindery things. I'm losing the plot at this point.
So right, so there was actually a Witchfinder General called Matthew Hopkins, who was this guy who was around during when Cromwell was around, and he went around finding witches. And that was good, but then they kind of extrapolated what if there was a whole Witchfinder army? And this idea that basically throughout the centuries, certainly from the 17th century at least, there have been this group of people, possibly initially in like puritanical hats, going around looking for witches, and they're kind of the thin red line to protect the country from evil. What it ends up being is some slightly crazy old bloke who lives in a dingy flat above a shop, who has some sort of bizarre and inexplicable accent that just, wanders around all over the place, who kind of runs it, and it's really just him looking at newspapers and trying to find stuff that's witches, and he's quite obsessed with how many nipples things have, because witches are supposed to have lots of nipples. There's also a whole thing about, I didn't bring a pin.
Okay.
I don't need to pin this. Well, I probably do, but I'm just not doing it. So stuff like pricking witches with pins. There's a lot of like old stuff from like the 17th century that he's still sort of going on a bit. And at one point there were loads of people in this army. Now there's not. There's just this one guy. But sort of unbeknownst to him, he's kind of being financed by, and unbeknownst to either them, Crowley and Aziraphale as potential operatives that might be useful on Earth. On the basis that Aziraphale thinks that, well, they find witches who are evil, so I guess they're on our side, and Crowley for slightly more complex reasons of, well, they seem to be causing a lot of problems with people, so that always helps hell. So he pretends there's loads of people. What happens is a young man called Newton, sort of looking for something to do but not quite wanting to join the TA, sees an advert for it, signs up for the Witchfinder Army, and then discovers it's mostly sitting in this old bloke's dingy flat listening to him ramble about stuff that happened a very long time ago, while cutting up newspapers, until Newt decides actually he's found some actual phenomenon in the newspaper, and can he go and have a look at that? And then he travels to this rather idyllic rural thing where there's a lot more stuff going on than you'd think. There's also some sort of, well, it's got a lot of bits to it. So there's also the stuff of, there's the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, except the horses are a little bit old-fashioned. So there's them kind of gradually doing stuff. They've been hanging around humanity for a while doing their thing. And then there's also, the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nutter, which Agnes Nutter was a 17th century witch who could see the future with perfect accuracy and wrote it down, but obviously she was writing it down with the understanding and also laser focus. So he said it's kind of like looking through a keyhole to the future. You can just see bits. So she wrote a thing that said, "Do not buy Betamax." She didn't know what that meant. So it's kind of like, everything's kind of written in this cryptic code. And basically all of her descendants since then have this book that she published just so she could get a free copy of it. And then, and they also have lots of index cards because all her descendants trying to figure out what it is she's actually prophesying. But sometimes you don't realise that prophecies come true until after it happens, particularly when it's written, say, in like terms of a nice. So, for example, the prophecy for the 22nd of November 1963 is that a house fell down in Darlington or somewhere in the UK. That's the day Kennedy got shot, but she didn't really know what America was, or at least, I mean, it was there, but like it wasn't important. But one of her ancestors, one of her descendants, was in the British town, and it's that kind of thing. It's like, so there's one character called Anathema, who's kind of a professional descendant, but they know that Agnes has predicted the end of the world, so Anathema's not necessarily going to stop it, or she knows about it and is just kind of working to figure it out, but it's sort of a bit odd. She sort of feels like she has to do what the book says is going to happen. So that's sort of an interesting thing. She's also, they're both witches.
So there's quite a wide range of different characters. This is a comedy. I mean,
there's also a lot of like side bits, like the people who publish the Agnes Nutter book. There's like a whole side bit on other random stuff they've published.
It's quite good.
There's a lot of side bits.
Quite good for little side bits.
The footnotes because it's Pratchett.
Yeah. So that kind of gives you a rough idea. It's a lot of it's basically about the apocalypse and friendship, and
there's kind of an environmental message in there a bit about like taking care of stuff and things, which I felt they didn't really amp up. Like I think it was fairly present there for I guess the 90s, but I don't feel like they amped it up much in the TV show.
Yeah.
They didn't do the trees. I missed the guy in Brazil with his tree that he rescues from that shopping mall. That's the other thing. There's lots of little bits because like the point is in the world's coming, so weird things happen. So like all these trees in the rainforest in Brazil suddenly zoom up, and the Kraken comes up from the sea and attacks a whaling ship, and Atlantis rises, and it's like, and the people of Atlantis join a cruise ship that hits them. So there's lots of like little bits. It's kind of almost a bit like a sketch show, but not quite. There's obviously a main theme running through it as well.
I mean, if you've read Pratchett, it's you kind of understand the way the humour is. But I mean, it's Gaiman's got his also.
I mean, well, Gaiman's pretty good at doing like a whole different range of stuff. Even with Sandman, the whole point he did that was because he could write anything. So so there's like historical bits and. Because there's like flashbacks to stuff that happened in like 17th century, and I mean, it starts just outside the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve have been expelled. That's the other thing that's actually very Gaimanish, I suppose, the kind of biblical type stuff.
Yeah, so you know, it's got a lot of
riffs on it,
and I think it's got some. It's just fun.
It is fun.
I mean, yes, it deals with the end of the world, but.
Well, I think the point is that we haven't said, because I've not watched it, it's sort of based on the Omen films as well, but I've not seen those.
No,
and I feel like I'm not sure I'd be able to see them now, so I'd be a bit like, oh, that's... Like, I think the thing where, like, the sort of minions of, like, heaven and hell turning up at the house to look after the child, like, is that, I think, the big dog, there's a big dog. He said, is it a big dog or is it a small dog? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just... It doesn't. It doesn't. It also just doesn't take the piss too much about religion and.
No, it's just sort of there.
It's obviously we are not
a narrative of certain events occurring in the last 11 years of human history in strict accordance, as shall be shewn with the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Natter.
I mean, neither of us are particularly into religion, but it
I was at one point a bit more, but yeah. It's sort of like this bit where it mentions bits of the Bible. So, for example, there's a bit where, like, there's the angel collects books and he has an old bookshop, except not really to sell books, just to collect them, to have someone to keep his books. He has a bookshop, and he discourages customers as much as he possibly can. But he collects Bibles with weird misprints in, because they're like a weird collector's thing. He also collects books of prophecy. So there's one whole bit where there's a load of extra stuff where it's a bit like... There's a bit where it very strongly suggests that he was once outside of printers in, presumably the 17th century again, and kind of added some verses to a Bible describing a bit that he was actually in. It's like, didn't you have a flaming sword around here? It's like, oh yes, I shall forget where it my head next. Sort of stuff like that, which is in a random version of a Bible. It's good fun.
What would you say would be your favourite character? What's your... Asking the tough questions now.
It is tricky, isn't it? I always kind of had a soft spot for Aziraphale. It's interesting, really, because the recent TV adaptation did, some different things with it, and that was really good, which is good because I was kind of concerned about... Well, no, I wasn't concerned about how it would be. I was reasonably confident, particularly as Neil Gaiman was so heavily involved. But, yeah... You
take the standard... It's been adapted for TV. We're going to be concerned.
Well, yeah, but we'll see, because I reread it right before the TV show was on, and there's a really strong narrative voice, and there's all these great little puns and side bits and stuff. And I thought, oh, that's just not going to be in there. But then they did actually find a way to put so much in. I was sitting there, like, mouthing along with the TV show because I just read it. And then they also added stuff. Most stuff they added is quite good. Like, I mean, the book doesn't specify what colour Adam and Eve are, but they had a black couple in the first thing, so a bit like, we just kind of, in the TV shows, like, we don't want racist to feel comfortable. And then they added the whole bit where Nazis were, like, awful and got tricked to the TV show, because it's like, well, you might as well. And, like, even the demons a bit like, oh, you guys. I mean, in fairness, well, so you like Crowley. It's hard to like Crowley, as it were, because he is a demon. It's caused a lot of problems. But,
and Milton Keynes. Oh, no, nobody takes responsibility.
Nobody takes responsibility for Milton Keynes. No, he invented, it's the M25
yeah, sorry,
thing he invented. There is a bit where the M25 becomes a ring of fire around the city, which feels weirdly topical, and I think people made jokes on that, considering there's some recent thing where apparently some people were saying, well, you can just lock London down inside the M25, and the Mayor of London's like, I'm sorry, what now? But yeah,
you could set but we don't suggest setting the M25 on fire.
No, well, it was only because of the apocalypse was coming. I think it's probably Aziraphale for me, because even in the book, like, he's just trying really hard to do the right thing, but he also really likes Earth. So this is his whole character conflict is a bit like, I'm trying to do the right thing, I'm trying to do good, I'm trying to encourage humans to do good. That's why I might have been on Earth for 6,000 years. But also, this is the other thing that Crowley and Aziraphale just massively bond over, is that they both really like Earth, because they've just been there the whole time. And that's how Crowley gets to Aziraphale, is a bit like... So Aziraphale's trying to prevent the apocalypse a bit, But then it turns out that actually heaven do want it to happen because there needs to be the Great War. And how can they decide which side is best unless they have a big old fight? And Aziraphale's like, oh, wait a second. But then also at the end, Aziraphale's the one who kind of comes up with, if not the answer, at least the question that puts everyone on the back foot. And there's also the fact that, he's just... he wants to do good, but it doesn't always match his superiors. Whereas Crowley wants to be evil and cause problems, but he doesn't really like his superiors so much. And I think that's kind of how in the TV show, Aziraphale was Michael Sheen's portrayal of Aziraphale was really good. I mean, both him and David Tennant did really well, and were the main reason why that works so well. And I think they focused on those characters even more than the book does. But in that, you can really see the conflict that he actually really likes Crowley, but he doesn't want to give up on his... I hadn't thought of the way they did it before. Is that he likes Crowley, but he knows Crowley's bad, and he wants to do good. Whereas Crowley, I don't think really cares for his superiors. It's just the side he happens to be on. And I think that's how they did it. What I will say is that this book has been inspiring slash fiction about these two characters, I think since it was about. And when I read the book, because I realised it existed, or probably when I was a little bit older, but I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's an interpretation, not too bothered. But then the TV show came out, they clearly amped that up massively with Sheen and Tenant, and then I'm like, oh no, I get it now, and yes, I will watch some stuff on the Ineffable Husbands hashtag. But the point is, they did it a bit more. But in that, you see, Crowley always seemed like the one who's a bit more cool, confident, in charge in the book. But in the TV show, it's clear that actually the relationship dynamic's different to how I thought. But it sort of also makes sense. So, I also like that Aziraphale can literally perform miracles, but does a whole very crap magic act in an old-fashioned top hat and frock coat. And then he pulls a handkerchief out of his sleeve, but it's just covered in lace because Aziraphale can't get into the 20th century. Hardly at all. It's just really funny. Yeah. Who's your favourite?
Yeah, you'd have thought, having asked you that.
You keep doing this.
And
I'll ask her a question, and she won't think to ask it back.
No, I knew for what you're going to ask it back. I was just hoping you'd take longer. But then I started cutting pieces out, and then I don't know. I've kind of got a soft spot for Newt.
Yeah,
he's. I don't know. He kind of feels a bit like me. A bit.
Okay. I suppose I didn't have that now.
A bit very much.
Anathema.
Unsure. Not sure where going with life. Certainly in that age. So I'd imagine for when I read it, it was very much a.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And kind of, wanting, finding something that's like you can actually go and be a part of. And then being wrapped up, getting involved in something really bizarre and odd. Mm-hmm. But it turns out really nicely for you. So
yeah, Newt is good as a character, as you said. How did you feel about the casting in the TV show? Because he was played by Jack Whitehall.
It possibly wouldn't have been. I mean, I couldn't tell you who I would have said to cast it. I'm no good at that game. It kind of seemed all right.
Well, I was quite impressed by it, because I think when they announced that Whitehall was playing Newton Pulsifer, I was like, really? Jack Whitehall? Oh, okay. But I think that's mostly because I've seen him in things where he plays, posh, egotistical young man, and I think also there's an element of that being his sort of stand-up persona. Yeah. Perhaps that's egotistical, a little bit more self-deprecating, but the key descriptor of Newt is that if he went into a phone box and went through a transformation, he would come out looking like Clark Kent. He's just this sort of very average guy, and he wants to be so he looked into various religions, didn't quite like that. He tried to be an atheist with a capital A and care about the universe, but then when he looked into it, he started reading magazines with words like quantum in, and then he realised that the people who were supposed to be looking into this, in fact, didn't know what the universe was about, and quite proud of that, and he didn't like how that works. At one point he thought he'd go in for was it New Age stuff or sustainable stuff? Yeah. But then he saw a diagram which had a goat on a rope next to something, and having met a goat before, he's like, "What? These people are insane." He's kind of looking for something, but he's quite normal. He's also the opposite of good with computers. He tries to fix a computer and it breaks. So
to be fair, I didn't quite.
No, so you're actually good with computers.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite way around. If if I get called over to look at computers 9 times out of 10, it starts working just by me standing over it.
So that's kind of the opposite Newt. But yeah, Newt's sort of looking stuff, and then he kind of gets involved with Shadwell, who's that weird old bloke from Witchfight, and then he's like, I just kind of want to go out somewhere. Like I'm part of this now. I've kind of become sort of one of the few support structures for this old man, who I sort of like, despite the fact he's kind of obviously a bit awful. But actually, I want to go out somewhere, which is how he gets involved in things. But yeah, I think it was that Newt would have to try hard to reach mild mannered. But I can see I was quite likable. A lot of the human characters got less time in the TV show than in the book. I think because they're focusing more on Crowley and Aziraphale, but again, those were kind of the star actors. But yeah, I think Jack Whitehall did really well, because when they first announced it, I was like, okay. But then when I was watching, I kind of half forgot it was Jack Whitehall.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, he is actually doing like very mild-mannered, a bit humble, and all things have gone a bit wrong, and all, you know. It's the kind of thing I could see like a much younger Martin Freeman doing, because they put him in a lot of those kind of roles. But obviously he's like a little bit on the older side for it now. Yeah. But it's that sort of like slightly put a look on, but doing going along with it and just like a bit everymanish. But yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that. As I say, I wasn't. To be fair, I think I couldn't have told you who I thought it should have. You'd have cast it. So it's Jack Whitehall seemed all right to me, and he seemed to do. I think, to be fair, your outstanding your stars in that were. Tenant and they put in a lot more content about Crowley and Aziraphale, and then because in the book it starts off Crowley and Aziraphale because it's like the start of the world, and then it kind of goes through and kind of they're very involved early on, and there's a bit where they don't appear for quite so long because they're kind of off doing things, and it just sort of checks on them occasionally, and then the human characters get a lot more. So both Newt and Anathema, who are kind of their plot lines kind of come together, and then also the Antichrist and his group of people. But I still thought that like the TV show did pretty well, but I think there was a bit less focus on that because it's all about this village called Tadfield in Oxfordshire, which I know that's not a real place, but you're from Oxfordshire, so is it like that? Not in the slightest. And I mean, I did live in a village in Oxfordshire, but yeah, we just it was not like that. I mean, there are interfering locals, and that local always wrote to the editor about things, including the weather. The thing with Tadfield is because of it's basically Oh, maybe that's why we liked it, because we're both from semi-rural villages. It's played as basically English village. It is the 90s, but Tadfield is kind of like the 50s. It's somehow still just William. And the weather's always nice. That's why Newt goes there. But they have snows on Christmas. It always snows on every day of Christmas. When was the last time it snowed at Christmas, as Newt says? It's sort of, it's like it's almost too normal. It's almost too like it's kind of the stereotype of what normal would be. If you take like just William, the famous five, those kind of Boys' Own Adventures. Yeah, those. It is just that. Kids on bikes and going down the local den place to make a den and do plans and just play outside. It's like no, you know what? I mean, to be fair, I didn't live in the villagey bit of the village. I lived in neither, actually. I lived in the estate. Oh no, okay, sorry. We there was an estate in our village where most people were, and then we were out on the main road. No, I lived in the. So I was a bit. I was a slightly newer village than yours. A bit sort of away, but even then, we wouldn't. It wasn't. I think most of hanging around would be hanging around the streets in the estate, or I suppose it was the paddock. So I didn't really go hang out very much. We were both indoorsy children. Yeah. Too busy reading books. It's our problem. So yeah, call that a problem. No, I wouldn't. Let's face it. That's basically been practice for this year. It's like, do you want to spend a lot of time inside without seeing your friends? Like, well, I don't want to, but I have practiced it extensively. So it's not exactly unfamiliar. Yeah. Why do you keep going back to it? Because obviously you said it's the most reread. I think it's just one of those books I read at the right age. There's a lot of books people go, oh, I love this, and then you read it and you're like, well, it was basically fine, but or I read it like Wrinkle in Time. I read that and I was like, I think if I had been younger, I would have loved this, but I'm a bit like, So I think it's just one of the ones I read at the right age. It's also not terribly long. It's also just really easy to read, and it's quite funny and light-hearted, despite being about the end of the world. There's lots of these little footnotes. There's also a lot of weird formatting in it, because they have the cards Agnes Nutter does has there'll be the prophecy she wrote, and so her ancestors have written it, her descendants have written down, and then they've just written suggestions as to what it is. That's a bit sort of interesting, and it's it's just all the fun callback bits. So, like, you know, a demon comes out of a telephone line and and there's a call centre, and it's sort of like people going a bit like having things like, you know, how regularly can you interrupt people? And there's like a thing for that, and the demon comes out of the telephone line and destroys them, and then at another point, an entire call centre of people have lost a day. There's the stuff about, probably there's stuff about Agnes Nutter and her family. There's just all these little things that just link together, and there are various things that I understood more. Like, as I read it, there was always another joke that I got, like the thing with the call centre where they're, you know, they're quite proud of, like, getting people out of the bath, or like, you know, or who can interrupt them, and then, you know, it's like, oh, so and so's won the Coitus Interruptus award this week. I don't know how you know that over the phone, though, now that I think about it, but when I first read the book, I didn't know what that meant. So anyway, well, I think the same is true of a lot of Discord stuff I read. It's like, I see that was a joke now. I was a bit young. But yeah, there's just lots of little things, I guess, you spot each time. So that's quite fun. And yeah, it's just a real fun read. Also got to the point where, that's one of the reasons I reread the Road Full TV show, where I had a very definite idea how everyone sounded in my head. It's like, I need to read the full TV show and it gets replaced. But actually, I think this is one of the few things where actually I've read it enough that it's like, no, they're actually two completely separate things in my mind, and that's fine. But they're still both really good, because I think... Did you have, like, a favourite addition to the TV show?
See, I haven't read it.
I was going to say, you're not nearly as encyclopedic as me about this book.
I think the backstories with Aziraphale and Crowley were
the kind of through the ear stuff.
Yeah, I think in the book that, you know, you know...
Touched on.
You know that they've been around each other for a while, and they've kind of got this you know, the agreement, and, you know,
that reference stuff, like, oh, was that one of yours? Was that one
of
yours? Or do you remember that place in Paris in like 1754?
You don't see them interact outside of the kind of what they're doing, whereas the flashbacks in the show allowed you to see.
Isn't it like most of the third episode is just the flashback?
But you'd have to see actually to build that relationship.
That's true. Well, there's a lot more focus on their relationship, and,
you know, and actually seeing them
as hell.
Actually seeing what, you know, what the it became slashy as hell, and that was fine. You know, it's like that's. And let's be honest, angels and demons technically don't have genders, so.
They don't have genitalia, it mentions.
Okay.
What it says, what the book says, one of the things that people assumed about Aziraphale when they met him was that he was English, that he was intelligent, and that he was gathered in a tree full of monkeys on nitrous oxide. Which, again, I think it took me a while to understand that reference precisely. And it goes, it's like. What is it? That England is not in heaven, despite what certain parents have you believe. It's like angels are no more intelligent than humans, but they've been around a lot longer. And then it was that, you know, angels and demons don't technically have sort of the parts for sexuality. Well, no, I think angels don't have it, and demons can if they want to. And it's like, okay, that's a whole thing.
That's fair enough.
But yeah,
I was disappointed they took out the three bikers of the apocalypse.
Yes, there is a bit where the four horsemen of the apocalypse meet some bikers, and there's a lot. But I think there's basically Hell's Angels and lots of. But I think that was quite of its time. Like, were people worried about how? See, your dad will know this better because of your dad. Like, are people worried about Hell's Angels now? I don't feel like it gets mentioned really anywhere apart from when we discuss your father. So
I think, in some respects,
there's all this stuff about you got these rough guys on bikes who've all had like done time, and they're Hell's Angels, like, oh, real Hell's Angels, but then I think a lot of that's very written jokes, like narratives in there, but a lot of it's thought process thing, and it's about. I
think in some respects as well that I always that bit always made me feel like it should have been in America rather than England. Yeah, I mean, possibly at the time it was.
Well, they did say they thought it would happen in America. It was going to happen in America. They were very surprised they were in England.
You know, but so I was kind of disappointed they left them out, but it makes perfect sense.
I missed the trees, like I say, which is just this odd bit where some guy in Brazil who's cleaning in a mall notices that all the trees are growing really quickly, and he tries to basically help a tree break out of a mall because the rainforests are growing back. I kind of miss that they didn't talk more about the environmental stuff, because it is kind of in there. There's basically at one point a young character gets given a load of like New Age magazines by Anathema, and starts sort of thinking, oh, save the whales, and like, you know, deforestation and all this stuff that no one ever told him before. You know, which is all, you know, stuff like nuclear power and stuff, which, I mean, again, obviously Pratchett worked in there. There's a whole bit with the nuclear power station, but Pratchett used to work in one. So, I also missed the bit towards the end where someone points out that maybe humans would have been better off if Heaven and Hell weren't always messing about with them, and actually explicitly points out that Crowley and Aziraphale are the ones who are messing about, and they didn't kind of put that on the TV show. I was like, I felt like that was quite an important point. But yeah. But again, I think all of that comes with the human characters who didn't get quite as much of a thing. But yeah. I think the environmental message, which obviously was a bit different in the 90s to now, but is also much more urgent now than in the 90s. Yeah, I think that could have been perhaps played up a bit more. But, you know. Yes.
But overall, it was an excellent adaptation of...
I like that they cast, what's-his-face as Mr. Young. He's in all sorts of things, and I can't remember the actor's name now. Danny... I forgot his name. Anyway, there was a lot of good casting in it. There were a lot more. Actually, that was the thing I noticed. There were a lot more people of colour in it, which I sort of hadn't thought about. Like having just read the book and reading, go, oh, I just pitched a lot more of these people as white. So that's kind of the thing on me because it doesn't really specify. I mean, there's well, they took out the bits where there's one point where a character's kind of going on a spirit travelling thing, and they do kind of turn up in like Australia, and there's like some Aborigine stuff and there's some voodoo stuff, and they took that out, which is good because I'm not sure how well. It's a bit stereotypical, that stuff, so they took that out. But I think other than mentioning that one character starts making comments about the Asian shopkeeper that lives nearby, but then somebody else is going, but that's not where that is. It's just that kind of politely pointing out his stereotypes. So they kind of took a bit of that out, but then I think the fact they just had like more people of colour, like Sister Mary? It was Mary too obvious, wasn't it? There are some satanic nuns in it.
The Order of the Chattering...
The Chattering Order of St. Beryl.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sister Mary Loquacious.
I did like...
Was played by... Was it Sophie Okonedo? I'm forgetting all of the actors' names. I should have looked at the cast list of this first.
I did like the bit in when they go back to the... So at the start, there's this nunnery where...
But satanic nuns.
Satanic nunnery.
So they look like regular nuns, but like evil.
Yeah. Where the children Antichrist is born. So they end up going back later on as Aziraphale.
11 years later.
In order to
track down
what went wrong during their last visit there.
Yeah, it all went a bit wrong.
And basically the order has dissolved, but it's been turned into a paintballing.
It's a conference centre, but they do basically paintballing
team
building.
And so just because he's a demon, Crowley gives them all real weapons.
Every thought in that man's head was calling out for a real weapon. And Aziraphale's just scandalised. Like, you can't. It's like, fine, they'll be a load of miraculous near misses.
It's like, so they get, it's just these guys in paintball, and then suddenly it just goes all very Apocalypse Now as they're all running around with...
again, that's a reference I probably didn't get when I first read the book.
Running around with real, actual hardware. It just amused me greatly, just the idea. Because a lot of, some of these people that do these paintballing things for team building exercises can be a little gung-ho about it.
Okay. Yes, well, I think that was the point, wasn't it? Yeah,
that was the top point.
I also quite like that in the TV show, then they sort of like have a bit more of an argument about it. But...
Yeah. That's fine. So I think our general view is read the book, watch the TV show. Both of them are perfectly valid. TV show is on Amazon Prime.
And I think the BBC had it for a bit as well.
Yes, it was on the BBC. It's also available on DVD. The book is available in all good bookstores and borrowed from your local library.
Okay, but people can't go to libraries quite as soon as they now.
Well, in Birmingham, you can offer, order and collect, which means you can...
Promoting the libraries again. No one is paying now.
We've talked about books.
That's true.
And I'm giving people options of where they can go and read the books.
Fair enough. Yes.
Go to your local library when you can, or use whatever curbside collection, order and collect system that they have to read Good Omens. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How far did you get in your?
Oh right, yeah. Sorry. I I mean, the pipe cleaner's in there, and I realised I don't actually have more elastic, so I'll have to do that bit next. It's actually, my other pipe cleaner's all the way along. This is shorter because I don't actually have to go the whole way. So, yeah, I just need to put some mask in. But I've got one mask that fits really well, which I'm using most of the time when I go on the bus. But I've got another one where the elastic's a little bit shorter, because the first thing I read seems to recommend really small elastic. Which works for a little bit, and after a while, like, my hair starts falling out, and I thought, what's happening? And I realised it's because my ear is being bent like this, and doesn't actually hold the hair back anymore. And I was like, So I'm sort of coping with that one. I think it's okay if I'm on the bus journey, but not if I'm going shopping.
After
and then you have one that gave you with even more elastic that you thought was alright, so you can try that one.
Yes,
you need to get into a better cycle of kind of like washing them and stuff.
Yeah, I'm currently using a bandana that I got as a.
I mean, I do have a bandana as well.
A freebie from ordering a model ages ago. Mal, if you're watching still, the black when I got my Scar 3 model, I got a bandana. It's coming useful! I never thought it would.
That's good.
So, although I imagine everyone's looking and wondering what Black Anvil Industries is. Possibly thinking I'm sort of in a biker gang or something.
I don't have to be worried about that. We also got our son a very cute mask with dinosaurs on. He's little enough he doesn't technically need the mask, but it seems a good habit to get into and he seems quite like it. So I will actually make some on the sewing machine at some point, but only after the horribly busy bit of work is happening. Also, I think work might be giving people branded masks when we go back on campus, so I guess we'll see what that... They never missed an opportunity for branding.
I know I'm getting supposedly quite a nice, an okay nice-ish one from work.
Oh, okay, there you go. But, well, it seems sensible to have extras, isn't it? So.
Yeah. So.
I have to move the sewing machine to put the laptop in place for my busy week next week. So.
I have managed to build more of my feet.
Not your feet.
Not my feet, and bits, internal gubbins for
the inside bit of the robot.
Yeah, it's. I have to say it's a lot of internal structure and then armoured plates around it. So this takes a bit of time.
Oh, okay. It's not just like a model of it, it's actually got internal bit.
Oh yeah, it's very actually. So it's actually very
detailed,
flexible.
Okay.
I could wax lyrically about the how these go together. Manuel says he regrets missing out on the Menoth oven mitt that they offered.
Okay, sure.
I'm sure he doesn't really miss the oven mitt.
I really don't know enough about what you're saying to know if that's sarcastic or not.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether he's being sarcastic either. I can't even remember what the model was that they're offering it. I think it was.
You forgot you even had the bandana. You were like, I don't have anything. I'm like, you have a bandana. And you're like, no, I don't. I'm like, yes, you do. You have one. And it's mostly because I tied it away and put it with my bandana. So
yeah, it's because
like you got one with a thing that you ordered. But yeah.
Chapel, I think. Menoth building, I think it was.
Okay, sure.
Doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, a branded oven mitt. I mean,
okay. Yes.
Yeah, pay.
Okay.
Paint your man off.
Yes.
Goes to both of you.
Friend and vaguely localish author. Yes, is also talking about painting things and wargaming stuff.
Talk to Manoff. Two of you. You both play. Both got Manoff.
Yes, Chris and Katie just talk to each other. Yeah.
I suppose we should really wrap this up.
Yeah,
that's we need to
put the milk bottles out.
Yeah. And sleep and.
Sleep.
And work tomorrow.
I'm going to be so knackered next week.
So, as we said at the start, nothing next week from us because one of us will be tired, one of us will be doing something, I suppose. Waiting on your hand and foot. There we go.
That'd be nice, yes, thank you. That would be the advantage of doing this from home. It's like, well, I don't have to actually commute in and you're here and that's nice. I can just get food when I want. So.
Yeah, I mean, that is the upside.
I can dress very comfortably.
Yeah.
Not going to the office.
But yeah, we'll see about in 2 weeks' time. As we plan these highly vigorously and well in advance, we have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But if you do want to catch up on this one, or if you want to watch any of the other ones we've done, they are on YouTube. I will put some links up
Is the X-Men one on?
No, not yet.
No, okay.
If you want to watch me waffle about X-Men, last week's ones.
So we've done one you're very good at, and now we've done one I'm very good at.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Alright.
Tried. But anyway.
Well, thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for watching. Hope you all had a good evening. And
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Wear your mask.
Yeah.
Heroes wear masks.
Okay, yes.
A lot of them wear them around their eyes, though, so I'm not entirely sure that they've got the right idea.
Okay, yes. Anyway. Just derail it again.
Yes, that's what I do. I just derail things. Can you imagine being in one of my training sessions?
Well, I could kind of half hear a lot of them, but
That's
okay,
fair.
I see you're a little bit more focused on that since you had like actual stuff to be presenting and outcomes to achieve.
True.
Anyway, yes.
Anyway.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.